Hey everybody, it's JJ Talks since Thursday on the Breakfast Club. And today I want to talk about robots, androids, humans, and stuff. So the other day, Paul made a video on the Breakfast Club about self-driving cars, and you may or may not know that recently Uber had a self-driving car that killed a pedestrian, and so they freaked out and shut off the car and all this stuff. So the concept of self-driving cars is um, is a very specific field of conversation when it comes to AI and robots, and so I think that warrants its own discussion. But this semester I'm taking a class on science fiction literature and science fiction and fantasy, and listen, my instructor's crazy. Hopefully he's not watching this, but I think he's like self-admittedly crazy, and it's an amazing class, and we're reading all these crazy stories. And this past few weeks we've been focusing on the idea of artificial intelligence, and we've been focusing on. So the stories that we read were I Sing the Body Electric and The Marionettes by Ray Bradbury, and we read Fondly Fahrenheit by Bester. And if you haven't read Fondly Fahrenheit or Marionettes or Sing the Body Electric, I would really recommend you read those stories. I'll put them in the description. They're just amazing and really quick reads and to give you a lot to think about when it comes to AIs and robots and cyborgs and stuff. So I don't know. I am not really like the idea of all this is very interesting to me, but I feel like I don't really care about it in some ways. So we are going into territory with robots and stuff that is just terrifying to me. Like there's already people wanting to marry their robots. A woman in France got married to a robot that she made, or a 3D printed robot. Um, and that's just like the idea of getting into relationships with robots, and at what point like is like identifying like sentience and in artificial intelligence, like at what point does artificial intelligence become sentient? At what point would you need consent from a robot to marry it? Like it all really interesting stuff, but like it's just terrifying to me. Like there's no turning back at this point, obviously. Like there's no like way to undo all the progress that we've made. Not that they would necessarily be good, but whatever happens. I think we're all gonna die, but that's just my personal opinion. Um Yeah, so I'm kind of like of the opinion that I'm not gonna even like pay attention to anything that's going on in regard to robots, because I'm like, I don't even know. They're all like trying to replace actual people, replace jobs, which there's an oh gosh, I wish I could remember who it was, did an interview where he kind of like extrapolated the future of like what would it be like if robots replace jobs and stuff like that. Um, and although it sounds like it would be a good thing, I mean, in terms of you could get the same amount of production done, you could take care of more people essentially. Like if we had robots doing these jobs, doing dangerous jobs, and stuff, theoretically you could take care of a lot more people without the need for human labor. Like humans could essentially stop working, but that's not what would happen. Unfortunately. Um, but yeah, it's all just really interesting stuff. And then today in class I was talking about how like, Roombas, for example, like humans imprint on things very easily, and like their families um, are much more likely to want to get their Roomba fixed if it's broken than get it replaced, because families will imprint on the Roomba. And what's so like crazy is that it's not like it looks like a person. It's not like it's got a face or it's cute or anything like that. I mean, maybe you think a Roomba is cute, but we just imprint on things so easily. And so, a lot of times we've got this perception that, robots are going to be evil, or we're going to enslave robots, and in many ways we already have, and in many ways we probably will. But like in some ways I think that emotionally, because we imprint like that so easily, that we would be enslaved to robots without even being physically enslaved, like emotionally. So I just think it's all really interesting territory. And I'm just kind of like of the opinion that I kind of just want to sit back and watch what happens. um, as many of you know, I study linguistics, so I'm really interested in, um, I'm personally interested in cognitive linguistics and like how language is formed in the brain and the evolution of language over time from different stages of humanity. And something that I know is that, in my opinion, if you were able to teach a robot, if a robot was able to acquire human language, then that would be the point at which a robot achieves sentience. So, like, a lot of these robots that people have been making really famous and popular, like, I can't remember her name, Sophie, maybe. A lot of that dialogue that they have is scripted, so, or it's limited to a very specific type of conversation or fields of conversation. And the reason that this is because it's really, geez, dare I say, impossible for a robot to learn human language. And the reason is that the reason kind of comes back to this idea of like the human brain. You'd have to recreate the human brain in order to give a non-human the ability to acquire language, because language is so much more. So a lot of people think language is just like memorizing words and definitions and memorizing sentence structures, and really that's not the case at all, especially if you consider, pragmatics and the idea of language in use and the functionality of language. So saying things that we don't. So, and this trope, like this idea of like the over literal robot, is something that you can find in like most science fiction. You've got a robot who when you talk to it, takes everything extremely literally, which is funny, but it's also kind of true. So like, we say things in sarcasm like, oh yeah, I'm real excited about that test. And when I say that, I don't mean, hey, I'm literally excited. I'm being sarcastic and I'm saying, I'm not excited about that test. But I didn't say those words. But because you're a human being with the social context of what my tone and what my language implies, you know what I'm saying without me directly saying it. Our words that we use very rarely reflect literality, I guess, literalness. So that's a thing. And also, we as humans are able to extrapolate new forms of words and forms of syntax without being taught or told. So the huge, groundbreaking example and proof of this was the WUG test, and I feel like I've talked about this before. I don't think I've talked about it on this channel. Maybe I have, I don't know. So this cognitive linguist would give children a picture of a bird and said, hey, this is a WUG, and then would show them a picture of two of these birds and say, okay, there are two what? And the children would say WUGs. Children have never heard the word WUG before. They haven't been taught that you say WUGs. But they were able to come up with this solution because they're able to understand that the regular plural morpheme in English is the S. And so they're able to make this word even without any other context. And so another example would be I think they used another one like gutch or something like that. This is one gutch, two gutch is. And so not only were they able to add the S to the end, but they were able to know the instances in which, so for gutch, they didn't add just S, they added ES. And the children were able to do this automatically because they pick up on the little like the patterns of language. And so far, artificial intelligence is not able to do that. And And this is why you hear kids, so if a kid say like, oh, I hurted myself, so hurted is obviously not the correct past tense of hurt. It's hurt is hurt in English. But children know that the regular past tense in English is ed, so they will add ed to the past tense of things, like I hurted myself, and obviously that would get corrected as they grow up, and they would start to say I hurt myself. So if you were to hear an AI in the nascent stages of learning language say I hurted myself or someone hurted, then that would be a point where I'd be like, okay, so they are like this thing is actually acquiring a language in a meaningful way. But, besides that, humans also use language in very, gosh, I don't know how to explain this in a way that doesn't like take 7 hours. So humans are also, we use metaphor a lot and when we speak. And so I don't just mean like direct metaphor like you would perceive from literature. I mean like conceptual metaphor, and this is something that I'm studying right now that I'm interested in studying in grad school and in the future. This idea of conceptual metaphor and how we incorporate metaphor into pretty much every conversation that we have. So, I'm trying to think of an example. So, for example, we perceive life as a journey, and we often articulate life as a journey. So, saying that there's a bump in the road, or I've come to a fork in the road. So things like that like literally demonstrate that, life is a traveling on a road journey. A lot of times you've got certain, events that occurred during your life would be significant, either struggles, like physical impediments that would occur on your journey. So, another example of this would be, I'm trying to think. Oh, yeah, even just the idea of moving forward in life. So someone's like, I'm moving forward in life. They are not physically moving forward. It's an abstract concept, and we apply this life as a journey metaphor onto that, and so we can perceive them as moving along on their physical journey, even though that physical journey is not actually happening. And it's in everything that we say. It's in almost everything that we say and everything that we do. We perceive time as a moving object around us. The way that we conceptualize the entire world relies on metaphor and reference to other things that we know and that we've seen, and a lot of that is experiential. So an AI would not have those experiences or would not have that framework of reference to rely upon, and would likely be unable to utilize metaphor in the same way that we do. So, for another example, like one of probably the best examples is the idea that argument is a war, for example. That's a metaphor that's extremely popular. So, you've got your opponent and yourself. You've got ammunition, which is like ideas or points to use against somebody else. You defend your point, you make headway into someone else, there's just a ridiculous amount of metaphors for the idea that an argument is a war. And again, without the social, and this is just in the English language, so in other languages and other cultures, their metaphors are very different from ours. And it all just comes down to how, a group of people perceives the world and what kind of perception of the world that they want to perpetuate and, make into the dominant perception. And artificial intelligence can't do that. It doesn't have the motivation to do that, And because of this, will not be able to use language, human language, in any meaningful way. Maybe in the future something crazy happens, but I personally think that until we replicate the human brain into a robot, then when that might require the use of organic tissue. Like I don't think it's something you can. The human brain is much less like a computer than people originally thought, I think. And so it's all just really complicated and interesting. I don't know, like Paul's video made me think about this, and I know this is a lot. So, in summation, I think the whole thing with robots is like really interesting, but I'm kind of just like, don't really want to, I don't know, I just kind of want to sit back and see what happens. Maybe we all die. Or maybe we get robot puppies and everything is very cute and awesome. I don't know. Anyway, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.